Sure, now I'm a little more relaxed. Impact investing is a very broad term that represents an array of investing, but for the most part, it's private sector capital that's invested into companies, funds, organizations with the intention of generating environmental or social impact alongside financial returns. There's a difference between nonprofits thinking about impact investing and really for-profits thinking about impact investing. For a long time, social entrepreneurship was really sort of a metaphor, and it was a metaphor for nonprofits that were keen to adopt the tools and the practices and sometimes the rigor and some of the other methodologies from business, but it was really in sort of a metaphorical sense. So for example, Robin Hood Foundation here in New York considers itself a venture philanthropy. They use lessons from venture capital. They talk about their grants as investments. They talk about all the organizations that they work with together as a portfolio, but they are really providing traditional philanthropic capital to nonprofit organizations. Increasingly, what we're seeing in some of the examples I described are really not a metaphor. They're really much more literal. So they are companies that seek not only to earn revenues, but ideally profits, that I think nonprofits sort of chase what they think of as impact capital, when really, they're nonprofits because they're addressing market failure. They're serving populations that it's really hard to think about generating revenue, much less profits in what they're doing. So if you think about really hard to serve populations, if you think about homeless populations, if you think about people who have mental illness or other disabilities, it's hard to think of sustainable business models sometimes to serve the most vulnerable. That I think most nonprofits have to think very carefully about whether they are sort of committing to people providing them resources, whether they are committing returns, or whether they are really seeking a grant, but a grant where they promise in return for the grant, let's say it's from the Robin Hood Foundation or the Tiger Foundation, that they are going to measure and evaluate and track progress on that grant, which is different than impact investing, even though we may borrow some of the language and the terminology.